Please welcome to the stage stand-up comedian and TV host Ben Gleib and psychotherapist, best-selling author of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, and New York Times Ask the Therapist advice columnist, Lori Gleib.
That's funny.
Hello, everybody. Lori Gottlieb, everybody. We are not yet married. It is not Lori Gleib.
But by the end of these 45 minutes, you don't know what my last name will be.
You never know. Thank you guys for coming here. We're not awake either. It's good to have you. Lori, thank you for doing this talk. This is going to be very interesting. Your column for the New York Times is so amazing. And I guess the first question I wanted to ask you, if you don't know, she writes this incredible column called Ask the Therapist for the New York Times. And so often people write in with their question for you, and they see a problem a certain way, and the way you see it is totally different. Even just from a small thing that they sent to you, it seems the real issue is something very different. What is that?
Oh, so many things. It's not that they don't see it. It's that, we all tell stories from our perspective. So it's really interesting. We're all unreliable narrators, every single one of us, myself included, which means you probably won't believe a thing I say right now, but we are all unreliable narrators, which means that we're telling the truth as we see it, which means that we are not really considering what might be going on with the other person. We come up with a story about what might be going on with the other person, but again, it's filtered through our particular lens. So when I get a letter, actually this really interesting thing has sometimes happened where somebody has written in and then somebody else on the other side of that, like someone's like, my husband is this. And then a husband writes in and says, my wife is doing this. And then I put it together and I realized they both wrote in about the same issue, not knowing the other person wrote in. That has happened a few times, which is, like, the fact that it happened once was crazy, but it's happened a few times. And so the versions of their stories had some kind of overlap in the Venn diagram, which made me realize, oh, these are two people involved in the same story. But their interpretations of the story were so incredibly different.
If only it weren't against ethical laws to just tell them about each other's letter directly.
Well, then you have to pick, like, which one am I going to answer? But either way, I'm answering sort of both of their questions.
Right.
But I think so many times we make so many assumptions about, like, why the other person did what they did, what they must be thinking, what their motivations were, without really looking at our role in whatever's going on.
Is that, do you think, the biggest problem that people have, if you could identify one thing overarching, is that we just don't see ourselves honestly?
We see ourselves in the way that is consistent with how we view ourselves. So we assume we are generally good people, and we are, but we're human, which means that we have all kinds of other things driving the way that we decide to interact with somebody, and we don't always assume that the other person is a good person. And so I think that if we were to say, if I do this in couples therapy a lot, where people come in and they are telling about something, and I'll say, I want you to tell this story from your partner's point of view. If you were your partner, how would they tell this story? And it's really interesting because they're much more generous when they're telling it from their partner's point of view, because now they're inhabiting that person, and they have a lot of empathy and compassion for that person because they are playing that role. So I think that that's really helpful in our lives to say, if I were going to tell this story from the other person's perspective, how would I be? The other person wouldn't say, I'm a really selfish person and this is why I did that.
Right.
The other person is like, I did that because, here's an example. Somebody was saying, he always comes late. Every time I want to meet him, he always comes late. And he doesn't care about me, he doesn't prioritize me. His side of the story was, you like to eat early, so I try to leave the office early for you. That's what I'm trying to do, but it's always too early, so I can't please my boss and I can't please you, and I'm stuck in the middle. So he was trying really hard to prioritize her, but logistically it was conflicting with his work, and so he was getting in trouble on both sides.
So why are human beings so bad at communication? Because that seems so simple. Just a simple question, and relationships probably end by the millions because a therapist never said to them, now just tell me the same story from your partner's perspective. It's so easy.
Well, I think also we generally want to change the other person. You know, when people come to therapy, usually it's because they want something to change, and what they want to change is someone else or something else. And by the way, there's some truth to this that, you know, like a lot of times the people who come to therapy are coming because the people who should be coming to therapy in their lives are not going to therapy.
Yeah.
So you're the one who's sort of going to therapy, trying to figure out how do I deal with the person who won't come to therapy and who is creating all this problem in my life.
So is that often what couples therapy is one person being dragged?
Sometimes it's one person initiating it. You know, and I think the stereotype is that, you know, it's the woman who says, like, we have to come to therapy. But there's I think there's a lot of...
Not in my past relationships.
You're the one?
I'm always like, please, we got to do this.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's unusual. Usually it's the woman. But it's not that the guy doesn't want to be there. It's that in our culture, it's sort of not socially acceptable still for men to be vulnerable and for men to really talk about their internal lives in this way. You know, when I have individuals come to therapy, usually, you know, a guy will come in and he'll say, I've never told anyone this before. And he literally means that. Like, he has not told a soul. Even if he has a great marriage, great friends, family, he's not told anyone. And if a woman comes in and says that, she'll say, you know, I've never told anyone this before except for my mother, my sister, my best friend, right? So she's told like 1, 2, 3 people, but she feels like she hasn't told anyone. So in couples therapy, you know, if it happens to be a man and a woman, and the woman maybe will come in and say, you know, I really want to feel close to you again. I feel like I don't know what's happening inside you. I want you to open up to me. And then right there on my couch, he does, and maybe he starts being vulnerable, and maybe he even tears up a little bit, or maybe he even starts crying. She will look at me like a deer in headlights, like, I don't feel safe when he doesn't open up to me, that's why we're here, but I also don't feel safe when he's kind of crying and vulnerable in front of me. So what is he supposed to do?
You ladies get now how hard this is for us? This is
right.
So,
but I think it's that we need to create space for men to be vulnerable and not just say, I want you to be vulnerable, but what happens internally for you? What are the cultural messages that are making you feel, let's say, unsafe when a man is being vulnerable with you? Because you say you want that, and in a lot of ways you do, because you can't have that closeness without it. But then what happens with this other part of you that says, oh, maybe I need him to not do that in front of me?
Right. I mean, it's a really hard balance, because I know a common thing in relationships, and that, or at least that I've experienced in mine, and it's to no fault of my own, but the sex disappears. It's not my fault, for the record. But I don't know exactly, obviously it's the everyday of life, and the person becomes your best friend and you stop caring, and there's the polarity disappears to a large degree. But also, I feel like sometimes like I am a pretty emotionally vulnerable person, and maybe that doesn't come out in the first 3 months of dating, and then it starts to come out. And I feel like once you've cried in front of your lady a lot, not a lot? Not a lot. But here, when necessary, or when a particular episode of The Golden Girls is sad, and then she's holding you, talking about your grandparents, maybe that's not the sexiest thing either.
Right, so we have these competing desires, right? So there's the desire for sort of something that's a little bit scary, something that's a little bit novel, something that, you know, like what is it that kind of brings on the desire, and then what brings on closeness? And those can overlap, and they do, but they also can be different polarities. And so we all have these different dimensions, and we need to bring out those different dimensions in our relationships.
Do you give advice in therapy to men and women differently? Like, what are the big differences you find when you're doing solo therapy with a man or a woman?
Well, with both people, before they even come to couples therapy, my assignment for them is I will say to each person, what is one thing that you want to change about yourself that would make you be your best self in this relationship? Because everybody has something that they could do better in the relationship. So instead of starting couples therapy with, I want him to change this way and I want her to change this way, or whatever it is, it's not about what the other person is going to do. It's even if the other person changes 0%, what is it that you want to do to be better in relationships? And that changes everything.
If they're going 0, I'm also going 0. It's a firm line for me.
They can't get into the room with 0. They have to actually have that before they get into the room.
Actual tangible things.
Actual, like what is something that you know you need to work on to be your best self in a relationship? And so we can't change other people, but we can influence other people with our behavior. So it's not this, you go first and then I'll change. You know, like if my partner would do this, then I'll do this. I wouldn't be this way if they weren't that way. It's you take responsibility for how you want to be the best version of yourself in this relationship, and let's see what happens. Really different.
Yeah, that's very different for sure. By the way, at the end of this talk, time permitting, I think we'll be able to do it. We're taking one question. So feel free and think of it as we go.
So it has to be a great question, because there's only one.
Only one very good question, and don't give us like a very deep, lengthy, traumatic situation. Just you can ask for advice or any general question you'd like. We'll get to it later. This talk is called The Funny Thing About Being Human, and we're becoming almost obsolete already. AI is proliferating very quickly. What is it that makes us human, and how can we do that better?
I think what makes us human is what AI is trying to kind of get rid of, which is, and what I think sometimes we try to get rid of, but it's what kind of makes us beautiful, is the messiness of being human. Human beings are ridiculous. We are ridiculous. Like, there is a huge gap between what we want and what we say we want and what we actually do. There's this huge gap. That's the problem for most of us, is I want this, and yet I do everything in my power to make sure that's not happening. And we're not even aware of it. It's
and often do things outside. To make it further away.
Yeah. It's completely outside of our awareness. And so human beings are really fascinating. And I think there's something so kind of beautiful about the mess and the struggle and the ways in which we keep repeating patterns, but also the ways in which we start to become aware of our patterns and we start to change. There's something, if you start off with, I've already made all the changes, fine. I mean, that's AI maybe one day, but what's so beautiful is to watch what I see in therapy is I see people come in and they come in at one place and then, however many months later, they're doing something different. I always like to say that insight is the booby prize of therapy, that you can have all the insight in the world, but if you don't make changes out in the world, the insight is useless. So what are you doing between sessions? Someone might say, hey, I got into that argument with my partner over the weekend, and I understand why now. That's the insight. Great. Well, then I'll say, did you do something different? Well, no, right? So the next step is, okay, so now you're aware, what are you going to do differently? Because we're all engaged in this dance, right? So it's like you're doing this dance with, a family member, a friend, a coworker, a partner. And so if you change your dance steps, if you do something different, they're going to have to change their dance steps, or they're just going to have to, fall on the dance floor, get off the dance floor. So if you change your dance steps, something different will happen.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into the standing in our own way. Like, why do we do this as humans, and how can we learn to fix it? We literally profess out loud over and over again to anyone who will listen, this is who I am, who I want to be, these are my goals, and then we self-destruct and do not move towards it. Why is it? What's the psychological cause of it? It doesn't seem like that's the best way to survive. It doesn't seem like it's the best way to achieve your one life and not die with regret. Why do we do it?
Well, we cling to what's familiar. So, Virginia Satir, the psychotherapist, had said that the certainty of misery is generally preferable to humans than the misery of uncertainty. So we are better with the certainty of misery. We prefer it, the certainty of misery over the misery of uncertainty. We don't like uncertainty. Because
we see it as a potential.
It's scary.
It's an unknown. It could harm us.
It's scary. Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, and so we cling to the familiar. It's the reason that you see in relationships, like people will come in and they'll say, "Well, why do I keep going after the same kind of person that I know is always going to disappoint me in some way?" And that's because it's what's familiar if that was what was familiar to you growing up. Like if your parent disappointed you in a certain way, either they yelled at you, or they were withholding, or they were inconsistent, or they drank too much, or whatever it was, we think, I'm gonna do the opposite of that when I grow up, right? I'm not gonna get a partner like that. And then there's like radar inside of us. It's like you see that person and you're subconsciously you say, oh, you look familiar, come closer.
Right.
You have no idea. Like you're thinking, this person's totally different from anything I experienced growing up. And then like 3 months into the relationship, by the way, because like the first 3 months of a relationship, it's that Chris Rock joke, you're not you, you're the ambassador of you. Then after that happens, and then like the real you comes out, then you see like, oh, that person had that reaction that feels eerily familiar, right? Which is why I always tell people that in the beginning of the relationship, you need to bring things up, because relationships are like cement. Like in the beginning, it's not dry yet. So there's a lot of room to kind of see, how can we mold this? How can we shape this? Once the cement dries, then you gotta like get out the jackhammers and you gotta like dig everything up. So if somebody is doing
that sounds kind of fun though, in a way.
Well, how has that worked out for you?
Not well, but it sounds fun. It just sounds fun in theory.
See, a lot of people come into therapy and say, that is not fun. That's what I want to change.
That's an insight for me. Okay, so it shouldn't be seen as fun. Fair enough.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing, is like if something is happening early on in a relationship and you don't like it, people say, well, I don't want to bring that up. I don't want to seem too high maintenance. I don't want to,
right.
like rock the boat. Well,
I want to get stuck in a relationship where I'm not myself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that way the person falls in love with not me, and when it comes out, it all falls apart.
Yes, and
it's a good plan.
That's the plan. And then what happens is you realize, like both of you, you're not compatible or you didn't know how to talk about it. Whereas if you had talked about it earlier, you could have maybe seen, is this the right relationship? Are we able to kind of work through this thing that maybe is difficult? It's really important to bring those things up early.
And even little things, like I've seen you talk about with that exact issue, like even texting, like setting the patterns for, are you going to be someone who just gets communicated with by text, or if something is important, do you say, this is something I'd like to speak about on the phone early on?
Yes.
So they don't freak out when you ask for a phone call later that they think they're in big trouble or something.
Well, what happens is then they say, but we've always done it this way.
Right.
It's like, yeah, because nobody's brought it up.
And that's a fair argument, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is, because I didn't know it was a problem.
If you allow a pattern to be said a certain way, you're somewhat responsible for that pattern existing.
Yes, yes. And the problem is that we tell our friends everything that we're dissatisfied with in the relationship, but we don't tell our partner. So, and our friends, unfortunately, give us what's called idiot compassion. Do you guys know about idiot compassion and wise compassion? Okay, so idiot compassion is what our friends do. So, it's like, oh, this person, I can't believe this person broke up with me. And you know that, like, that's happened the last 3 times for this person because they, get too clingy, or they, whatever they do something, right? And you know what they do, but you say, oh, that's, you're right, they're wrong, you dodged a bullet, whatever. That's what we say because we think that that's supporting our friend. But it's kind of like if a fight breaks out in every bar you're going to, maybe it's you. We do not say that to our friends.
Right.
So what you get in therapy is you get wise compassion. So, and the word compassion is in there for a reason. So it's very compassionate, but wise compassion is we hold up a mirror to you and we help you to see something that you might not have been willing or able to see about your role in this thing that keeps happening. You think it's happening to you. It's happening, you're an active player in this. It's happening in conjunction with you. It's not like the outside world is foisting this on you. It's like you're an active actor in this scenario.
Right. And also friends are just terrible at giving any sort of feedback, because I've had the experience so many times, you'll be with somebody for years, your friends are always like, yeah, it's great, they're very supportive. Second you break up, they're like, oh, we hated her. Mm-hmm. Well, why'd you let me be with this person for 8 years then? It seems not great friend style, but friends are not good at giving honest feedback.
Well, it's hard to give feedback because you want your friend to hear it in a loving way. And, we think that we need to support their position, and that's the loving thing to do. But I think these sort of truth-telling in relationships, but not truth-telling in a way of, I'm right, you can't see this. It's more like if you
I can't say I'm right, And you can't see this?
You can. It might not work out very well.
Okay, I've been doing a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, but I think if you say something.
Can you yell and storm out?
You can.
Okay,
Again,
thank you.
how has that worked out for you?
I'm just hearing you can. I'm just gonna take you can.
You're getting a lot of. You're kind of, I think, evaluating yourself in relationships today.
Yep. Are we out of time yet?
You know, I think it's the way that you can say something to a friend is you can say, like, you know, if you notice something that the partner is doing that you think is not how they should be treated, you don't say, like, that person's terrible, why are you with them? You say, like, oh, I noticed that, you know, when that person yelled at you, like, you could say, like, I felt bad. You know, I didn't want you to be treated that way. What was that like for you? And they might say, oh, no, he was just in a bad mood, or she was just in a bad mood. But the more you can bring those things up so that you're kind of like, I hear you, I'm with you, like, I had compassion for you in that moment, as opposed to you have to break up with this person.
Right.
It just kind of plants these seeds, because sometimes people aren't ready to hear something, but the more these little seeds are planted, something will blossom.
Well, why is it so hard to be honest, even in friendships though? Like, people, I think we just like stay in this weird comfortability, and we just don't want ever to be seen as the person that makes things even slightly challenging. Like, look how hard it is to even tell a dear friend they have food in their teeth. Like, you'll just let a friend go around like an idiot all night. And then
Right.
if you ever tell a friend that, I make a point to tell friends that kind of thing, and they're like, wow, thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't do that. Like, I changed their life. And it's just they have pepper in their teeth.
Yeah. I think that we want to be liked. I mean, I think it's so much about, part of it is we don't want to hurt their feelings, but part of it is we are afraid that we won't be liked. As humans, that's how we evolved, is like, we have to fit in with the group. We can't be shunned.
Right.
We won't survive. So for our very survival, our main goal in life is, how can I love and be loved? That is it in a nutshell. What does everybody write into the advice column about in some version, no matter what the issue is? How can I love and be loved? What does everybody come to therapy about in some way, shape, or form? How can I love and be loved?
But again, it's like we want this papered over version of that, this like very thin veneer version, because like I just said, like, you tell your friend they have food in their teeth, they actually think better of you as a friend. They think instantly, you're like, wow, you're someone I can trust for real feedback. It strengthens it. Yet most of us just don't even try. We don't want like a deep connection. We want someone to not hate us.
Well, it depends what you're saying to them. I mean, I think most people do want you to tell
So
them.
you look like a damn idiot. Stop being an idiot.
Wouldn't you guys, let's take a start. If you had pepper in your teeth, wouldn't you want your friend? Raise your hands. Wouldn't you want, see, right. Okay, but
And raise your hand
if
if you
somebody,
wouldn't want it. Raise your hand if you wouldn't want someone to tell you.
okay, but if somebody,
Liars.
if somebody didn't like your partner, would you want them to tell you? Maybe, maybe not.
Raise your
you
hand if
think
you
so,
would.
but
Raise
not
your hand
every.
if you
Look
would.
at look at the difference
And
in
raise
the
your hand
number
if
of
you
hands.
would not want them to tell you.
Right?
Yeah, there's the hand.
So that's a harder one. So the reason we don't do that is because there's a 50-50 chance, according to our audience, that the person might not take well to that. And then they're going to push you away.
Right.
Right? And you lose that friendship.
That is true. You talk a lot about the importance of editing our story.
Yeah.
You even call yourself an editor. What does that mean?
It means, so I have this very weird, circuitous path to becoming a therapist. So I always was interested in story and storytelling. So I started my career in my 20s working in film development, and then I was an executive at NBC, and
Oh, wow.
I'm dating myself here, but this was the year that Friends and ER premiered, and my job on ER, one of my jobs on ER, was to go into the actual ER with our consultant, who was an ER doc, and come up with stories. And that was how I ended up going to medical school. He was like, I think you like it better here than you like your day job, which I did. So I ended up, long story, went to medical school, became a writer, became a therapist. But the point is, through all of this, even as a journalist, it was always about telling people stories. I'm fascinated by people's stories. And so I think when people come in, I'm looking at it, and of course now I'm a writer and a therapist, and I love taking the kind of material that they bring in and looking for the edits. Like, what are they not seeing? Who's the protagonist in the story? Are you even the protagonist in your own life, or are you a supporting player? Because so many times people, they're either like the protagonist and there are no other players, there's no other characters, and it's like, wait, we need to make room for the other people here. Or they're a supporting player and they don't even realize that they have agency, that they are the protagonist in their own life. So I really love taking the different kind of assumptions and stories that they have. And people walk in with all kinds of stories that they carry around, like, I can't trust anyone, or nothing will ever work out for me, or I'm unlovable, or whatever their story is. And it affects every choice, every decision.
You're
personal,
supposed to not share what I asked you in therapy.
Professional. I can do it anonymously,
okay.
but backstage. Whatever their story is, that's their kind of like how they're operating. That's the lens through which they see every interaction. So, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe that you can't trust anyone. Yeah, I've heard you say
that if someone says they're unlovable, they are.
Well, they do things to protect themselves. So they make it so that they will keep people at a distance, or if they get too close, they will push people away. They will do things to push people away so people don't want to be there. And then they say, see, they come to therapy and they say, see, I'm unlovable. And it's like, well, you kind of made that happen. You kind of engineered the situation. It doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means that you made it so that your story would be consistent with your core belief. And so what we need to edit is that core belief.
Is that easy?
It's easier than one thinks, actually. I mean, I think that's sort of the magic of therapy. I think therapy gets a really bad rap because a lot of people think that therapy is, you come into therapy, you download the problem of the week, your therapist validates your position, which is not really helpful because your friends will do that again. We've talked about that. Mm-hmm. So you can like pay a therapist to do that, but why? Just call a friend. And then you leave, and that's not therapy. Therapy isn't like, oh yeah, you're right. Therapy is asking a really interesting question. Like when people come in and they say, like, how do I know if I'm with the right therapist? I say, here's the thing about a first session. You want to come in and it's a consultation. It's not like you go to this therapist and you're in therapy with that person. It's like you go to that therapist and two things need to happen. One, did I feel like this person understood me as much as someone can understand you in 50 minutes, but did I feel like they kind of get it in a general vibe way? And the second thing is, did they say something or ask something that made me think about what I was coming in with in a slightly different way? We're not going to challenge people too much in a first session. We're just trying to get to know the person. We want them to feel comfortable. But you might say something like, and what do you think was happening there? Or has this happened before? Or did this feel familiar to you? What do you think happened in that moment, right? Something they hadn't really considered before, because they've told their story usually a lot of times before they come into therapy, right? They've gotten a lot of opinions about it, and nothing is changing. So now they've landed here, which they shouldn't, by the way. There was a study that showed that it takes, in general, 11 years for people from the time they felt like, maybe I should go to therapy, to when they actually come. So obviously in certain places like LA.
Talk about edging, that is a time.
Right, exactly. But I think in LA and New York, it's probably like 11 seconds.
Right.
But
also, quick point here. You said in the first session, you don't challenge people too much because you're just trying to.
But you want to say one thing, you want to say something that's going to.
Lori, therapy is like cement. If you don't establish the patterns early, then they're going to expect that.
But you are challenging them. But I think it's timing and dosage. So, it's like people come in and first of all, they want to be liked by their therapist, of course. But also, I think that they want to be seen. I had this couple come in once. It was one of the most important things that happened for me as a therapist. This woman said to her partner, she said, you know what 3 words I want to hear more? And he immediately said, I love you. He said, I know, I don't say I love you enough. And she said, no, it's I understand you. Those were the 3 words. I understand you. That is the ultimate expression of love, that someone will take the time and the care to understand you. They don't have to agree with you. They don't have to have the same perspective of you as you, but they have to understand you. and where you're coming from. And it's kind of like we all have these operating instructions, like, it's like when you get whatever it is, like you buy something and it comes with like the little manual, or a car comes with that or whatever, you generally need to have a sense of, oh, if I push this button, this is gonna happen. Don't push this button, that's gonna be a big problem, right? We don't take the time generally to learn the operating instructions of the people who are most important to us. So we're like, oh, I'll just keep pushing that button even though it gets a bad response. And we're like, wait a minute, that's the operating instruction that you should have learned from all this time is when you push that button, that's not good with that person.
Yeah, but also sometimes the operating instruction is written in like bad, broken Swedish English.
Yes, absolutely. So we are responsible for communicating the operating instructions. It's not that the other person is just supposed to intuit them.
Right.
It's that we actually have to communicate also.
Why is communication so hard? It's the breakdown of every relationship. It's just people are not willing or able to communicate well with each other. How could it be so hard?
Think about the kind of communication that was modeled for most people. They didn't necessarily see it. So where were people supposed to learn it? It's kind of like there are two things that I think people come into adulthood not knowing, which is how to deal with finances. Nobody teaches you this, like in school, this is not taught, and relationships. So people will know so much about so many subjects, history, philosophy, physics, whatever it is, but they don't know about like these two core qualities of adulting, which are how am I a responsible adult? Like how do I deal with finances and taxes and all the things? And how do I deal with relationships? We don't learn that necessarily. So where do we learn it? We learn it from what was around us. And so we get bits and pieces we get some good modeling, and then we get some maybe less optimal modeling, and then we kind of have to put it together and figure it out.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah, it can be.
People get stuck a lot in their ways, in their patterns, in their bad habits. How do we best get unstuck? Are there tricks to it?
I think that the ways in which we think we're protecting ourselves are actually not protective. And once you accept that and can see that I've been doing all of these things in relationships because I think that they protect me. An example would be, like when I get hurt, I withdraw. That doesn't actually protect you. There's so many different examples and they're idiosyncratic to that person and whatever they feel is protecting them. But there are ways, like I'm not gonna be too big in this relationship. They think that protects them. A million ways. And so when you learn that, oh, that's not actually working, that's not protecting me, it's keeping me safe in the sense of I don't have to deal with the kind of anxiety of the relationship, but it's not giving you the closeness and the connection that you're actually seeking in the relationship.
Okay. I have a lot to work on. Why, but maybe similarly to the question of being unstuck is how do we, why do we break promises even to ourselves all the time? Like how do we actually create lasting habit change? Because I'll break a promise to myself sometimes instantly, like within a day, I'll promise about eating habits or working out, or within a minute, I'm not gonna have dessert, but that one looks good, let's go.
Yep, well this is why New Year's resolutions fail, because change is really hard. And first of all, change is hard because with change comes loss, even positive change.
Right.
So you're giving up that kind of drive to the familiar that we have. You're giving up what's familiar for something that is unfamiliar. So it's like you might be really excited about a new job or moving or getting married or having a baby, and it's also really scary. So there are those kinds of things, but also changes in your habits, like I'm going to be healthier in what I eat,
right,
for your example. Or I'm, instead of doing this thing that I normally do in relationships, I'm gonna do something different. Change is really hard. So New Year's resolutions tend to fail because we don't realize that we are kind of grieving the loss. Even if the loss made us, the thing that we're leaving made us miserable, it was still familiar.
But
and so that's why people will stay in a relationship. Well, I'll get to that, but that's why people stay in relationships for a really long time that they know it's not going to be a good relationship, because that kind of, the misery of certainty versus the the uncertainty of misery and the misery of uncertainty. It's the same thing. It's like, I know what the bad things are in this relationship, and if I go out there, what if I never find a relationship? What if I don't find a relationship that has like the good things of this relationship, right? So it's like the things are certain, even though you're not happy in it, versus I don't know what's out there next. It could be better, it could be worse. I remember when, and I write about this in my book, that my therapist said to me once, he said, you know, you remind me of this cartoon, and it's of a prisoner shaking the bars, desperately trying to get out. But on the right and the left, it's open, no bars. So why is it, when it comes to change, that we don't realize that it's open, right? That we can change. And if we do see that it's open, why are we so afraid to walk around those bars? And it's because with freedom comes responsibility. Now we can't blame this, that, and the other thing on why we're unhappy. It's like, I'm responsible, I'm free, I'm responsible for the course of my life now.
And people don't want that responsibility.
Well, it's harder because then you have to hold yourself accountable. But
It
here's
also
the thing.
just sounds like a very poorly designed prison.
Well, it's a prison of our own making. That's why it's poorly designed.
Right.
That's the point, is that like we make that prison for ourselves. But change is really hard because there are stages to change. And we think, like with that Nike, you know, just do it, or a New Year's resolution, that like you make a decision to change and you can just change. Change is a process, and it starts with, and I have a chapter in my book that's called How Humans Change. And there are these stages to change, and it starts with pre-contemplation, which is you don't even know that you're thinking about making a change. Then there's contemplation, which is when people come to therapy, which is they're thinking about making a change, but they're really not ready to do that yet. They're kind of like, something else out there needs to change. I don't quite need to change, but all these other people need to change. And then there's preparation, where you realize that you can make a change. Part of it's going to be you. So that's preparation. What are you going to do to prepare to make the change? And some of that is logistical, some of that is psychological. And then there's action, where you're actually making the change. And that's not the last stage. The last stage is maintenance, which is how do we maintain the change? And maintenance is not linear. So it's not like, oh, I'm maintaining the change like this. It's like Chutes and Ladders, if you guys remember that game. It's like it goes down, it goes up. So there are going to be days where you're not making the change. But instead
It's too many steps and I'm out.
Well, then that's why you're just going to stay the same.
Okay, I'm back in.
So we go to maintenance, right? Maintenance is like, it's like people think that if you, like, let's take your example of, you know, like, I'm not going to eat that cake or whatever. So let's say that you do something that you say, okay, okay, I gave up Diet Coke like 2 years ago. And if I have, you know, like, let's say I'm on an airplane and I'm like, oh my God, that Diet Coke looks so good. That's like my thing, is the only time I really crave it now is on an airplane. If I have Diet Coke on an airplane, it's not like I'm going to sit there and go, well, you're horrible, you're awful, what's wrong with you, you're never going to be able to do this. I might as well just drink Diet Coke all the time now, right? When we self-flagellate, that is not what it means to hold ourselves accountable. Holding ourselves accountable means having compassion for yourself while also asking yourself, what was it about that moment that I can do differently next time? So it's kind of like, think of it if you have a child and your child says, like, I did really badly on this test. Your choice is, right, are you going to hold them accountable by screaming at them and telling them they're stupid and they're never going to do well on a test again?
Yes.
Okay, good parenting. So, you know, or you can say, hey, what do you think happened, right? What do you think happened there? So much more helpful, which doesn't mean like it's okay. It means like, what do you think happened? They'll say, I didn't understand the material and I was embarrassed and I didn't want to ask anybody or let anybody know. Oh, well, now we can figure out what to do. Or I just didn't study. I didn't feel like studying. I wanted to like hang out with my friends and I was on TikTok all night. Oh, well, let's talk about that, right? But that's really important. So it doesn't mean that you have to beat yourself up. It means you have to be accountable and do something different and understand, like, what are the conditions under which I do best with this change? And what are the conditions that maybe are harder for me to make this change? And so when something becomes, going back to like certainty and familiarity, when it becomes more familiar to you to do the new thing and it becomes a habit, then it feels safer. It feels safer than the old way, and you're going to be less likely to kind of go backward.
So it's just a slow process. You have to really be with yourself and like allow that grace when you mess up.
Grace with accountability.
Right.
And so it's holding those two things similarly at the same time. But we're so unkind to ourselves. You know, often I'll say to people, who is the person that you talk to most in the course of your day, in the course of your life? And I'll be like, you know, is it your partner? Lots of hands. Is it your parent? Is it your best friend? Is it your sibling? The person we talk to most in the course of our lives is ourselves. And what we say to ourselves isn't always kind or true or useful. And those three criteria are so important. So I had this therapy client who was so self-critical. It was almost painful for me to watch. And she was like, no, I'm not self-critical. And so I said, I want you to write down everything you say to yourself in your head. Like, write it down over this week, and let's talk about it when you come back next week. She comes back next week. She gets out her phone. She had written everything down. She starts crying, and she said, I am such a bully to myself. And there were things like she was writing an email, and there was a typo in the email, and she said to herself, you're so stupid. She wasn't stupid. She made, like, if your friend made a typo in an email, would you say, my friend is so stupid?
I would, yeah.
And you have a good, strong circle of friends?
I didn't say that.
Okay. So, but the point is it kind, is it true, is it useful? When you're making change and you're holding yourself accountable, is it kind, is it true, is it useful?
Interesting. And this is a safe space, so feel free to answer honestly. On the flight over here, did you have a Diet Coke?
I did not.
Well done.
I did not.
Well done.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the mindset that it takes to be an entrepreneur, to be a creator, to be somebody that you've talked a lot about how people have, let me just read it exactly. You said in your book, in your amazing book, 3 million copies sold, maybe you should talk to someone. You said that after a traumatic experience in your own life, you started going to a therapist yourself. And initially you were defensive, but eventually you realized that you've been avoiding these deeper issues of control and vulnerability. And just taking a guess, knowing this community a little bit, those are probably both big issues for a lot of people here. Relinquishing control and being vulnerable. How do you do it?
I think that there's the idea of people who feel like they need to control situations. It's because we feel out of control. And so you have to look at, are you really controlling a situation, or are you dealing with your anxiety? Because really when you're trying to over-control something, it's just anxiety about feeling like, what is the anxiety about? And if you get to the root of the anxiety, is the anxiety, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. I don't know if I can make this happen. What is the anxiety about? And once you understand what the anxiety is about, you have so much more flexibility in your responses. And so control is about rigidity and inflexibility. And then when you say, oh, the reason that I feel like I have to micromanage and control everything is because I don't trust that if I don't do that, that I have the capacity to make what I want to make happen.
Mm-hmm. Is there a certain mindset that you find works, that you need for success as an entrepreneur, for example?
I think the mindset is that, you have to be flexible, like I said, that you have to understand that that lots of different things are going to happen, and some of the outcomes won't be what you want, and that you're going to be okay anyway. And so if you walk through the world with the mindset of, like a piano's gonna fall on my head, or like the other thing's gonna, like anything's gonna drop, right? Like something bad is right around the corner. There are people like that. We call it cherophobia. People have fear of joy. Chero is joy, phobia, fear. It's like, I don't want to get too happy.
I feel like joyophobia would have been a better term for that.
I don't want to get, let's call it joyophobia. I don't want to get too happy because every time I get my hopes up about something, I know that the other shoe's going to drop. And so people can't take in joy because then they feel like, well, I want to prepare myself for the impending disaster. That's a terrible mindset to have for an entrepreneur, for anybody. So it's like things might not go your way, but it's not going to be a disaster.
Okay, I take that as a personal attack. Thanks for nothing. I have 2 more questions, and we're almost out of time, and then we're going to go to the audience quickly. But you've said that closure is a myth, that people go to therapy hoping for a quick fix or a linear progression, but you can't really get closure. That's not good.
I think what you can get is peace more than closure. I think people want to wrap something up, like a relationship or, closure is about grief and loss. So something has been lost, an opportunity that really meant a lot to you that didn't come through. a relationship maybe that didn't work out the way you wanted it to, something in your life. You know, we always say, like, you know, everybody has regret about certain things that they wish had happened differently. And so we think there's a way to kind of put a bow on it and have closure around it and not feel the pain of it. You're going to feel that sometimes, and that's okay, but can you make peace with it? Can you accept it? So I think that's what we work toward, is more about making peace around something as opposed to feeling like I'm never going to experience pain around that, because there are certain things that you're going to carry with you. It will feel different. It won't feel as intense, but you know, it's like we all know that there's certain losses, maybe something reminds you of it. Like you see a photo or you hear a song or whatever it is, and that comes rushing right back, but that doesn't mean you're going to be in that state all the time. But that's what makes us human, is the fact that we have this range of emotions. We wouldn't want to have like a flat line. This was the Good Place, the show The Good Place, right? Did people see that show?
I love that show.
Okay, not a lot of people. Okay, well, I'm going to spoil it for all of you right now. At the very end, so if you're going to watch this, they end up like getting everything that they wanted, and they're kind of like in this fantastic place, and they get bored, and they're like, I'm ready to die, right? Because we don't want to be in this sort of like mono state. We want to feel it all, and that's what makes us human.
I disagree, but give me all of it. Let's go. I'm willing to gamble. We have time for one question, barely. Raise your hands, okay? Your hand flew up, so let's go right here, Carrie.
Hey, so I find myself in a conundrum. I've got a best friend. We've known each other since college, 25 years. Over the years, we've both ended up dating people we should not have been dating. And we've had that awkward sort of kindness, candor problem of not being able to tell our best friend that, hey, I don't think this is the person you should marry. And at the same time, we wish open, honest, authentic relationship for them to have. And sharing this feedback with them puts them in a position potentially of now having to disclose this with their partner, which then further puts our friendship at risk. And there's benefits to both sides, I think, of having a friend that you can trust in, and also having a very open, honest relationship where you share with your partner most things or everything. And instead of thinking about it in black and white, like, do we talk to others or not, I'm wondering if you have a more nuanced framework of how do we get the best of both of those?
Yeah, I don't think it's our place to decide if somebody should be in a relationship with somebody else, because what wouldn't be okay for you in a relationship might be okay for them. So I think we need to remember that we can't impose our rubric of what we want on somebody else and maybe what they want, even if we don't think their reasons are necessarily good reasons. People are going to choose for all kinds of reasons. So I think, again, it's about sort of asking gentle questions of, hey, I saw when we were out to dinner, when, it seemed like you seemed upset when your partner did this. What was that like for you? It's just kind of having an open dialogue so that they know that they can come to you, but not from a place of judgment or that you have an agenda, but more, I can talk about the fact that I'm grappling with the fact that I'm a little bit uncomfortable when my partner does that, but I also don't want to leave my partner. And that's kind of where they are right now.
It's so interesting to me how we see things just so black and white. We really want to be able to make bold moves, and it just seems in so much of what you have written over the course of your career and you talk about in your column and here today, it's just so much the opposite. It's the nuance. It's looking at something with a little bit of a different frame, a little bit of a different way that you can actually like be kind to yourself and slowly move towards what you want rather than trying to make that big jump.
Right, and I see, it's interesting because in the comment section for my New York Times column, it's a very lively comment section, and people are very much, they're so sure in the comments that like, no, this is what the person should do, or no, this is what should happen. And there's not a lot of nuance in that, and what I try to do in my column is provide nuance. Like last week's column was about whether this mother wrote in and said, should our kids know that the reason we got divorced is because my husband had an affair? And I was saying in the column that there are probably lots of reasons that you got divorced, and people did not like that answer. They were all like, they wanted like to take this guy and like parade him through the streets and pillory him. And, you know, like, relationships are complicated and lots of things go wrong in relationships. And is an affair okay? Not optimal. But, you know, is that truly the reason that they got divorced, or were there other things going on in the relationship? So I think that when we think about relationships in a more nuanced way, it allows for, when we talk about story, it allows for so many more storylines, and that gives us so much more flexibility, and it doesn't lock us into a position that makes us unhappy.
I think I've learned so much over the course of this 45 minutes. We've now gotten to know each other. What do you think? Will you marry me?
Should I be Lori Gleib? What do you guys think about that?
I'm gonna let you get back to me.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lori. This has been fascinating. Lori Gottlieb, everybody.